Everyone. Today we are joined by Todd Greene, CEO at PubNub. Welcome, Todd. Thanks
Hey
so much for
Oliver, how you
joining us
doing?
today.
Yeah, doing
I'm
great.
doing well, thank you. Good, good. Awesome. Yeah. So before we begin kind of talking about some of the key moments that really led PubNub to where it is today, I really wanted our viewers to learn a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, my name's Todd. I've been at PubNub for quite a while now. And yeah, I came here, as we were just getting off the ground. I was the founder of the company, working part-time at PubNub, also running a company full-time that was called Loyalize, that was bought by the owners of American Idol, and it really helped inform what
Oh, that's
people
cool.
wanted to do with their, phones and laptops and stuff while they were watching TV. It was the early days of what we used to be called social TV, and we were really the first people to create an application that could be synchronized with live TV and actually push you trivia, polls, chat, those kinds of things in the early days. And we actually used PubNub to make that transition for that company. And it got me excited enough about being full-time here as a CEO, and the rest is history.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, 10 years plus, right? For being for like PubNub's history. That's a long time in terms of not only just for PubNub's history, but for your previous experience as well.
Yeah, you could take that part out. Don't rub it in, buddy. Kidding. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, fantastic. So, kind of during those moments during PubNub's, especially like their early days, really, what kind of helped shape our platform to what it is today?
Yeah, good question. When we started PubNub, it was with the premise that people were moving more and more to applications that had some kind of real-time nature to them. Whether it was a chat app or someone streaming stock quotes or controlling IoT devices, they all seemed, or multiplayer games, they all seemed to be very, very different kinds of experiences. But if you were a technologist, you realized that under the covers, they all had a lot of the same core technology, which was the ability to connect to a device, could be your phone, could be your laptop, could be a door lock, and then stream real-time data back and forth under very low latency conditions. And what we discovered was that everyone was building that technology app by app. And we asked the question, is there a way to do this that would be, that would work across multiple industries, work across multiple use cases? And that informed the original ideas for PubNub. And so one of the big aha moments we had in the early days was, given how important uptime and latency is for these kinds of use cases, this can't just be a server in a cloud somewhere. This needs to be a network. So we pioneered this idea of a globally distributed network for real time. We actually filed a patent for that in 2011, I think, in the very early days of PubNub, and were awarded that patent. And the idea behind it is just that the way a CDN caches data worldwide, so you're close to that data, we have data centers around the world so that when you have those real-time interactions, whether those are chat messages or game player movements or locations of vehicles or whatever, that's always near to you. That information is always closest to you. Can connect to a data center that's very close and deliver low latency. So that was the initial premise. And then happy to tell you about how it evolved over the last decade.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I mean, what we discovered was, hey, that was really popular. I think we closed 100 customers before we ever had anyone who had a sales title at PubNub. People discovered us online, signed up with a credit card, and then what we started to do was watch what those customers were doing and look at the things they had to build around that core publish, subscribe, pub sub messaging infrastructure. And that informed basically a roadmap that we've been working on ever since. The mission for PubNub, I'll start with the vision. The vision was always, how do we make it possible for people to have an amazing online interactive experience, right? And then our mission is, how do we play in that vision? Our mission was, how do we allow people to build all these kinds of live interactive experiences? What can we do to let them unlock their imagination without having to worry about all the infrastructure? So by watching those customers, we came up with a whole set of services we offer, from like, the persistence of those messages. That's easy, going back over time. But then presence, who's online and who's offline. Functions to allow you to intercept those messages and run logic, intercept bad chat messages and things you want to take out, or reroute information when it's geographically important, or any kind of variety of logic. And that extended out to a whole set of services, channel groups, mobile push notifications, and the list goes on. About 3 years ago, when we talked to our customers and said, well, what are the things that keep you up at night? What are the things you worry about? They had all built on PubNub. They were operating at scale. But it turns out that what they also needed to do was improve those applications, manage the users in those real-time apps, better monetize those, change the experience. And the tools they had really weren't sufficient, or they were building their own. So in the same way, we started asking, well, what can we do beyond just build? Giving people the platform and the tools to build. And so we've updated our mission to now saying we want to give people the tools to build, manage, and also optimize and monetize those applications. So in the last 3+ maybe 4 years now, a lot of our investment in time has been expanding beyond just APIs for developers to also looking at the trillions of data points flying through our network, giving customers the ability to analyze them, to even trigger decisions. Hey, look, if these many users in a 10-minute rolling window do this thing, I want to, push this information or change the way the app behaves. And so by being able to give those tools as well, we've expanded that, from build to manage and optimize. So effectively letting people improve the applications over time.
That's really cool. I mean, that's a fantastic thing where you're effectively building out these features depending on what customers need, especially like, more recently, even early on, I feel like that makes sense, right? You're building the platform out based on customer need, but even, we've already been established for quite a while, even a couple of years ago, and asking, hey, what are the pain points? What else can we do to help you out? And we're effectively more than just like an infrastructure platform. We're now a, one-stop shop for kind of everything that anyone could need. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think what we learned was that when you start getting into these large scale interactive experiences, um, if you're not someone who has to build them, a lot of people will say, well, I don't understand. Doesn't the internet do that already? We've got connections to everyone already. Well, it turns out, no, the internet is the very low level foundational layer, but the technology that's needed to give people that real-time interactive experience that you take for granted when you use everything from WhatsApp to Fortnite, is a lot of work, right? In fact, we learned in the early days of PubNub that a lot of companies were spending more than half of their development effort on the plumbing, right? On the stuff that makes that interactivity possible. And so by taking that off of people's plates and being able to provide that to them, I think it's really unlocked, a whole set of applications, which frankly would probably not have been possible because well, with enough time and money and expertise, you can build anything. The question is, does everyone have that time, money, and expertise? And don't they want to focus on their creative ideas, whether those are in healthcare, in gaming, in, transportation, logistics, food delivery, right? You name it, versus, focusing on on all of that infrastructure that's needed.
Absolutely. That's what I always tell people whenever I speak with them at shows. I'm saying, hey, we take care of all the hard parts so you can focus on all the fun bits of your application or your platform. So
Yeah.
fantastic.
And
Very
look, I
cool.
think that's, sorry, I was going to say, I think that's
Oh, no, no.
it's increasingly important now because people are under increasing pressure with fewer team members to get things done. And so the faster they can realize that vision, the better off everyone's going to be.
Fantastic. Yeah, exactly. 100% agree with that. Very cool. So I've been with PubNub for I think almost about 4 years. So I don't know a
Congratulations.
lot of kind of like the early history. Thank you. Some of the early history of PubNub. So I'm very curious. Would you be able to share a moment or any kind of story that really resonated with you where we built something completely new for a customer? Like either a new SDK or an API overhaul, or even, you've mentioned we've built out some core features depending on what they need. And kind of as a part two to that question, really what drove us to kind of invest that much, even if a customer didn't ultimately move forward?
Yeah, I think, look, software companies don't like building custom things for customers. And smart customers don't want custom things built for them because then you have to maintain that and you have to promise you're going to improve it. And if you realize that you're the only customer who's using that feature, over time it's never going to get the love and attention that it deserves. So, this is my third, at least third startup that I've done. And we've always, in the companies that I've started and run, always tried very hard to, rather than build for an individual customer, to try to look at the patterns of things that people need. And so PubNub has been pretty unique in my experience in the sense that in early days of most companies, you're doing a lot of custom development for customers. And funnily enough, the first time we had a custom feature requirement from a customer was after we had over 600 customers at PubNub. I think part of that is because we've always kind of thought ahead around what are the services that people are going to need and trying to get them out there before they actually ask for them. One thing that was interesting to us though was the breadth of use cases that PubNub had, right? And so while I think the core infrastructure was able to service those, you often need these custom SDKs, right? Some people originally wanted to do something on something called the PIC32 chipset, which was in some older IoT devices and, older versions of smartphones and Androids, and you name it. We've had, at one point over 75 SDKs. And so, sometimes, we'll do that on behalf of a customer, but we always then open source those and put them into the community. So for all of our community supported SDKs, of which there are now many, I've kind of lost count, we'll contribute where needed, but we also have a pretty large community that will, add to those if needed or tweak those. So that's been, an area that's allowed us to really expand into use cases, frankly, we never would have imagined. We power multiplayer games, we power tons of healthcare applications, we power fueling at many major airports. We power a lot of live events, whether it's a, live sports broadcast where there's a social app wrapped around it, or we've even done President State of the Union address applications as well.
Wow, that one I did not know about. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I think it was the first one we did was during the Obama administration, I think his second term. And he had an interactive thing where he was giving the State of the Union, and then he had a whole interactive app that you could use at the same time. And we had millions of people looking at the slides, chatting, asking questions while Obama was giving a State of the Union address. That was probably the first time we did anything in the realm of politics. But since then, we've covered elections in various countries with real-time data streaming, both to people's TVs and to the studios across, a lot of different regions of the world.
That's really cool because yeah, like if I always thought of it as real time, you can use that across a variety of different kind of like platforms and applications, and I think that's a cool way to think about it. Where we're not just for like entertainment streaming or for video games; it can be for even for political speeches and things like that. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I think the opportunities are really limited. And if you look at the breadth of our customers, it really cuts across so many different industries, both consumer and then B2B. So a lot of different things that we power.
Definitely. Yeah, I know I've, kind of going through and looking at our different use cases, it's quite a few and a variety. And some of those I use in my everyday life where I'm like, oh, I didn't realize, we power this feature for them. They're my favorite, I don't know, keyboard brand or something like that. So it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we are in so many different apps. I always tell people when I meet them, like, you might not know PubNub, but you use us every day. Have you taken a flight in the last, 6 months? Do you have used the Yelp application? Are you a Verizon customer? Did you watch the FIFA Club World Cup that last summer, right? PubNub was a part of all of those. And as I mentioned before, I think we're north of 500-600 million active devices on any given month with, I think, over 5 trillion interactive, transactions through our network. So we do power a lot of things that people are using every day.
Yeah, it's one of those the kind of the unsung like infrastructure supports where like you said, may not have heard of PubNub, but you definitely have used something that PubNub has powered for sure. Awesome. Okay, so as we're kind of approaching sort of the end of our chat, I wanted to ask you, we've talked a lot about kind of the previous experience of PubNub and kind of like the real-time platforms, but I wanted to ask you, where do you think real-time platforms are headed next?
Yeah, good question. One of the things that just continues to increase is the pressure that development teams and product teams have to get products launched and out the door. And those products, regardless of industry, tend to want to have a modern experience where information is pushed real time, where people are interacting with each other, where you're able to kind of measure and improve those things quickly. So as that pressure grows, we're also seeing, people shrinking their engineering team sizes, expecting AI to come in and help out. And we're going through this massive transition. So as a company that's always sold to product and engineering teams, a lot of our focus right now is how do we basically let our customers leverage the tools they're starting to adopt around AI, and make sure it's easy to use PubNub as part of that. So one of the great coincidental benefits of PubNub is because we've been around for a while and our docs have always been free online, not behind a paywall or a sign-up wall. Every frontier model AI, whether it's Anthropic or OpenAI or any of the other ones, any open source AI from Llama to DeepSeek, all know PubNub really, really well. So even as a baseline, you can go to any of your favorite code generation AIs and ask them to build PubNub powered applications. Now that said, we're leveraging a lot of things on top of that. We are now, I think, 4 months into our MCP server and learning a lot about how to make it even easier to just go from natural language to really powerful applications. And again, because our vision, our mission is beyond just build, it's build, manage, and optimize. The ability to also, in plain English, describe, or plain your favorite human language, describe the goals that you have, and then see those playing out in our analytics and decisioning platform, PubNub Illuminate. Well, the part of our platform that's the decisioning Illuminate part is really key. So basically leveraging AI to make it easier to do those things is a key part. Beyond just AI, though, there are a number of other trends that we are seeing. Everyone loves to talk about AI, and it's exciting, and we use it all the time at PubNub. But there are lots of other really interesting things happening in the industry as well, right? So we are now at a place where if you are using an app and you have to kind of like pull down to refresh or click refresh on your browser, or things don't flip on and off automatically, you start to lose engaged customers across the board. And that used to just be the case in consumer apps, but it's now the case in business apps too. If you're on a page in your favorite SaaS product, and I happen to be on that same page looking at the same customer or employee data or logistics data, and we're not seeing it update together, or my changes aren't reflected to your changes, people then kind of roll their eyes and go, man, this feels like it was built 20 years ago. And so because there's that natural expectation that everything is synchronous in real time, and if you don't build that into your apps, it's you're going to have people look at you with a skeptical look. A lot of what we're doing also is releasing more frameworks that make it easier to just plug that into your existing SaaS framework and then immediately have that real-time synchronization. So there's a lot we're doing to just make it easy to just embed that kind of experience without working particularly hard to do so.
I love that. So it's like kind of like the where you're taking an easy package framework to really easy give it to clients, customers, and then have them integrate that into their own platform
Right.
using the MCP server to help out with that integration process.
That's right. At the
Love
end of the
that.
day, it's just about making it as easy as possible to provide the most powerful, secure, real-time, scalable, experience without thinking about it that much.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, our documentation is great. I've used that for a lot of our different application building. But the fact that you can just, and it does read through our documentation, the MCP server, it's great that it can just do that while you're inside, I don't know, like Cursor, for example. That's where I use a lot of development in. And that's been very nice to have that kind of ready to go. So, yeah,
Yeah, I think we're
absolutely.
moving we're moving from a world of docs first to a world where your chatbot first with your AI, and it's reading the docs, right? And so, one of the things we spend a lot of time on is how do we make sure our docs are, equally useful for an LLM as they are to a human being. So that if you're using that LLM as that translation layer to translate to exactly what you need, it's getting the information it needs to be most effective.
Absolutely, yeah, and I've seen our documentation. I always release our docs notes every month. Documentation team does a great job of updating that, and they always try to make it as easy to be read by the LLMs, like you've said. Or it's like everything's available in Markdown, or you can even use the name is escaping me. Doesn't matter, but yeah, it's great. You can even do that from the command line. You can just pull in all the docs at once. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, for me, right, as a CEO, I used to have very little time to code, and now I'm probably dedicating 30 hours a week to basically a lot of code experiments, expectations of what you can get out of, code generation AI, how that plays into PubNub. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun and exciting. It's increased my workload quite a bit because I'm still doing the full-time CEO gig, but it is a hell of a lot of fun. It's a great time.
It is. It's really cool to see what you can do with it. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it to kind of see what's going to happen in the future as well. Well, thank you, Todd. Yeah, I think that's the end of our chat for today. Wanted to thank you for joining us, and hopefully we get to hear more from you in the future.
Hey, thanks, Oliver. Anytime, man.